In this video, we're going to... Let me try that again. In this video, we are going to have our first... In this video, we are going to have our first... Just roll the intro.
Go DJ, go.
Hello friends, DJ Brohawk here with our first look at Class D racing in iRacing. Today, we're visiting Oulton Park in the UK, specifically the Island Historic variant, which cuts out the long hairpin and avoids the two chicanes down the backstretch. And we're driving the Ray FF1600, a single-seater open-wheel entry-level race car. Without further ado, let's get into the driving. First thing you'll notice is that you can see me in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. I did that so you could see my reactions in real time. In time, you'll get my audio reactions, but for now, all you get is video. The overlay I used to see who was near me wasn't captured when I did the recording. I've already fixed it, but going back and correcting it in this video is too much of a task, but it'll be better next time. I did 2 races tonight. The first one had some of the best racing I have ever had across any game. And the second one ended up being very, very special. We're starting with qualifying in race 1. Now, the intro to this video with the crashes was somewhat of a joke, but I did want to drive home the fact that I crashed a lot in practice leading up to these races. There was a period where I must have crashed on 10 or 12 straight out laps when I was learning the car and learning the track, and also learning the physics, because this is a new physics engine to me, having come from Gran Turismo. I was in voice chat with some friends when I started learning this combo, and I'm sure they would tell you they learned a few new words that night. But it is important to remember to be kind to yourself. No matter what skill level you are, all of this, iRacing, Gran Turismo, ACC, Forza, you name it, it's all for fun, and it is all part of a learning process. Before you can be good at something, you have to be bad at it. There is no truth in life greater than this. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's plenty of people in the world who will gladly help you get better at what you're passionate about. With all that said, I do want to go over a couple of things about my setup and the race before we actually get into the race. The first thing you'll notice is I am shifting using an H-pattern shifter. I have one with the Fanatec series of equipment that very sturdy. I do highly recommend it if you are in the market for an H-shifter. But another thing is that iRacing is also really hard when you're having to use an H-shifter and brake and turn in and things like that. It's very complicated for the brain when you are used to using just the paddles. I saw some people when I was practicing and watching that were using paddles even though this was an H pattern car. I felt the immersion was a little bit better for me when I was using the H shifter, and you'll notice I don't clutch under braking. The game does it for me. Makes it a little bit easier since I have not tried heel toe downshifting in any car, never mind a virtual one. iRacing has a number of clutch options ranging from anti-stall to automatic transmission. I use the auto blip, which includes the anti-stall, the auto clutch, and the blipping of the throttle on downshifts. I wish there was an option that would let me use the clutch on upshifts only, which is kind of what this is. In any case, let's go on to the hot lap. The first lap was a 24.7, which is about 2.5 seconds off the pace from the top guys. I am car number 15 in this split. What that means is I am the 15th highest rated driver in the split. Now, I'll have you know this is a 15-car lobby, and so I am the lowest rated driver in the entire lobby. And so that, in a way, is a little bit freeing, but it's also a little bit nerve-wracking because that means I have to perform higher than halfway up the grid in order to gain iRating. Coming down the backstretch here, this corner was very tricky for me to get right. You have to carry a lot of speed through there. The goal is to keep it up to 100 miles an hour. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video when I give you my lap guide. Didn't do a great job there. Got down to about 94, 95. This corner is tricky as well. Really, this whole track, a friend of mine that lives near Oulton Park described it similar to Goodwood. And having driven it a few times now, I do agree. It is very fast. It is very flowy like Goodwood. A few more slow zones here than in Goodwood, but ultimately a very free and flowy track, and one that I actually enjoyed a lot. As we come to the line, this lap, as you can see on the dash there, it says 23.57. It was a 24.1. Good for P8, and this is a top split lobby. So I am the lowest rated car in the top split lobby, starting in P8. And now we're on the grid, and I feel like it's important to point out that all the races I've done in iRacing, I started from the pits up until now. I don't normally do grid starts on Gran Turismo, and so essentially this is my first ever grid start on pretty much any racing game with more than about 5 or 6 people. At the very least, it's my very first grid start in a ranked race, and I am starting in the middle of the grid. So I don't know if you can see it on my face. You probably can't, but I am exceptionally nervous right now. I am already kind of a nervous racer, and here we are sitting on the grid with our first ranked race from the grid on iRacing in Class D. I'm in top split, I'm the lowest rated driver, and believe me, I'm thinking about it as you watch. But little did I know at the time, this race would give me the best racing I have ever had. Now, what can we do? The video title is a bit of a clue as to what's going to happen, but what will happen? Let's find out as we start my very first Class D race in iRacing.
The air temp is 63 Fahrenheit.
Red lights on, clutch in, full throttle, waiting for the green light, and green light, we pop the clutch and we're off. So the first thing we want to do, we want to survive. Grid starts don't stay too wide for long, or at least I didn't think so. And so I hadn't really practiced this, and so I'm trying to just take it easy, knowing what works and what doesn't. You have a spotter in your ear that's basically saying, hey, car on the outside, car on the inside. I'm behind a little bit of a pack. I don't really know where to brake here, so I take it easy, end up conceding the inside. Ooh, barely held on to it. We lost a position. We're on the back stretch here, and as you can see in a moment, it's going to get even crazier. We don't really look for the move, but I wasn't really sure where to brake on the inside line, but I made it work, kept it tight to the apex, and we're off onto the back stretch.
Still there.
There is a car to my left, still going side by side. I end up conceding it a little bit to get in line here for this tricky right-hander. I feel like going too wide through here is a really poor decision. We get a little bit of a run on the 5 car and pull up next to him, and this right-hander coming up is another place. I don't really want to go too wide through here, but I don't have a choice because there is a car on my left still. You can't see it, but it's a zebra car. I slow down, I keep it pinned to the apexes. There is still somebody on my left, as you can see their wheel now. We are side by side. I am flying side by side on a game I barely know where to brake. We go down into second. We are still side by side through here. There's a car right behind me. We are coming to the start-finish line. Car behind gets a little bit of the toe and goes out, and we are 3 wide through the start-finish line, and I'm like, get me out of here. I bail on both positions and then end up going off the track, but I hold on to it, and here is where the disaster happens. I've conceded a couple positions. I know I'm in a lobby where I'm underrated, and I go around and I become someone's personal ramp, and you can see it on my face. I have ruined my own race. Look at me. In the comments below the video, I want you to tell me, what do you think is going through my mind in this very moment? Look at my face. I am disgusted that this has happened to me again. My very first rookie race, the same thing happened. I took myself out, and I have to sit and wait in the pits for over 2 minutes. My race is over. And you can see it on my face. I am sitting there shaking my head. How could I have let this happen? The reality of it is, I did. And this is a life lesson, because I'm sitting here processing, and this is one of those things, you can let this define your race and have a bad race, or you can put your head down, put in some quality laps from here, see what kind of best lap you can do, see if you can make up some positions. And that's exactly what we did. As we get ready to pull out of the pits, you can see I am still not happy with myself. I thought after the tow I would have to wait a little longer, but now I have some choice words for my monitor that might include something like, gosh darn, and why doesn't everyone just get out of my way and let me win? But that's not how it works, especially not in a sim such as iRacing. As you can see, I'm babying it. I'm a lap down, just trying to get out of everyone's way. The goal from here, finish the race, but also don't ruin anyone else's race. If I can do those two things, that'll be a small victory in my book after the frustration of having to wait in the pits for so long. And I do want to point out, there is a good way to get out of the way when you're a lap down. So you can see in the top left of the screen, I have the blue flag, which basically means, hey, faster cars are behind you, get out of their way, essentially. But you have to pick and choose your moments. As I'm driving along, I see them in my mirrors, and you can't see the overlays right now, but I know they're behind me. Trick is, I don't want to just bail out and slow way down, because that can also be dangerous. You have to pick and choose your spots. And on top of it all, they're not catching me that quickly. And so I don't necessarily just have to get out of their way as long as I'm not holding them up. So what I did on both occasions, which you will see here in a moment, is I wait for a moment where there's a decently long accelerating place. I lower my speed just a little and get off the racing line. There are quick chats in iRacing to let people know to pass you. I don't have all that set up, and therefore I can't just tell people to pass me. But my behavior in the car is enough of a indicator, and as you'll see, both people that I let by were appreciative with the quick chats shortly thereafter. As we skip ahead to the final lap, unfortunately this race wasn't really all that interesting after the crash. I followed this fellow around in the zebra car. We caught up to them, followed him around for about 5 straight minutes, but I didn't want to pass since I was a lap down. Just felt like putting some pressure on him, as I almost lose it on the final lap, and you can see my face. I wear my emotions on my face. Very nearly lost it on the final lap. Decided to back out a little bit and make it to the finish line. We're going to come around the final corner in what will eventually be P12 out of 15. A couple of folks quit the race. I was definitely in last place when I came out of the pits. So just finishing the race netted me 3 positions from people who quitted, which is a testament to what you should do even when your race goes horribly wrong. And as we look at the results page, you can see that my best lap ended up being a 23.3, which toward the slower end of the lobby, but not out of place. And we followed P6 around, who had over 1,000 iRating higher than me. So immediately I'm thinking, you know what? Even though the strength of the lobby on average is a 23.76, I wasn't all that out of place. At the end of the day, yes, I deserve the P12 because I crashed, but I was not so far off the pace that I didn't belong with these folks. I was still frustrated about the finish of the race, but I said, you know what? I cannot let my day end with a race like this. I'm going to do one more. And so 5 hours later, I decided to have one more crack at it. We're going to jump straight into qualifying in the second race. Now, the difference between this race and the previous one, for one, you can see in the bottom left, it is much darker in my apartment because of how much sunshine I get during the day when I play. Number 2, I am the number 1 rated car in this lobby. So instead of being the lowest iRating, I am now the highest. I was in the second split, which was bottom split. Real quickly, I want to point out, I am doing a lot of accelerating and braking. That is an attempt to heat my tires. I have talked to a lot of people and watched some videos where people say that weaving back and forth does not do much to your tires, but actually, quote-unquote, using your tires does. So heavy braking on the accelerator, heavy braking. I don't have any definitive proof this works, it's just what I've seen, and so I was doing it. Before we get into the hot laps, I want to point out the mindset difference when you are the highest rated driver in a lobby versus being the lowest. The lowest, it kind of feels like you're playing with house money, in that you're expected to not do very well. And while I did not do very well in the last race, I at least proved to myself I can hang with these people. When you're the highest rated driver in the lobby, it is a weight on your shoulders. It is a weight on your conscience because expectations are high. You should finish first, or at least you should finish high. I had done a lot of practice between this race and the first one, and so I was much more comfortable with the car and the track combo. But as you'll see in a moment, sometimes the weight gets to you a little too much as we get a track limit penalty. Now, in iRacing, if you get a penalty, or at least a incident point rather, it nullifies your qualifying lap. And so I, as the #1 car, now only have 1 lap to set a time and get toward the front of the pack. And set a lap, I did. Here's my fastest qualifying lap of the night, and here's a quick lap guide. After the board on the left, we get hard on the brakes down to 3rd. Try to get on the power early because we can use a lot of the track out there. We can definitely put wheels on the grass. This little bit's flat. We're going to come over the crest on the right, brake in a straight line down to 3rd, and keep it real tight on the apex all the way around. Hit the apex hard on the gas. You cannot abuse wide like you can on the first turn. This bit's flat. The braking point here, if I can pause it right here, that little piece of wall on the right that is right above my right mirror, roughly right there on my screen, is where I was braking. And let me tell you, I searched long and hard for a better braking point, and that was the absolute best I could do. Sometimes you have to find these really obscure things in order to find a good braking point, but it worked for me. I watched a couple of folks that were faster than me. That's the point of reference I could find, and so that's what I used. From here, brake hard in a straight line, all the way down to 1st. Get your braking done before you turn in. Hard on the throttle. This car's back end won't kick out. Now we're back on the back stretch. This is flat for a little while. This corner coming up is really tricky, and it was really hard for me to get this right. We're going to brake right after the 100 board. Turn in a little earlier than you think. Try to maintain as much speed as possible. I got down to 94. That's really not good enough, but it'll have to work. I kept the car on the track. Up over the hill going left. We're going to crest over the hill and then brake in a straight line down to 3rd and try to keep it as close to the curbs as we can. We can pretty much make this one big sweeping right-hander as we stay hard on the throttle through here. Crest over the hill. There's a little marker on the left. We're going to wait a split second and then brake hard down to 2nd. Get it in towards the curb and get on the power really early. Use the crescendo of the track. And then we're going to come across the line here in a 23.6. which puts us P1. Before we get to the race, I want to point out something that was noteworthy. You can see in the bottom right where it says race control, a fellow named Corey Kish has disconnected. That person was P2. And so immediately I'm thinking I might be able to have a little bit of a gap when the race starts. There is, of course, a little concern that because I might have a gap, I might end up pushing too hard and end up taking myself out in the beginning. But can't worry about that now. We have a race to drive. We need to focus on driving. So, last race of the night, deep breath. Here we go. David with the sage advice, don't screw up. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Lights are on, waiting for the red lights. Red lights are on, full throttle, clutch engaged, waiting for the green. There's the green, drop the clutch. Here we go. First step, once again, is survival and pray we don't get rammed in the back. But tires are cold. We got to be careful. We get it into 3rd. We get it around turn 1. Field starts to string out a little bit. Here we go. This curve on the left is a little tricky on cold tires. I'm just going to try and take it easy and get around it, and then we can work to push. I get around the corner, and then I look in my mirrors, and I see this. P2, 3, and 4 all spun out right behind me, leaving a massive gap. And then suddenly you start thinking to yourself, wow, I might actually win this. But as we take a wide view of the track, you can see the gap isn't really that big. It's only about 3 seconds, and we're on lap 1 of a 20-minute race. So I know I just need to put my head down and churn out some laps and do my best. I qualified on pole, therefore I should have the pace to at least stay near the front in this lobby, if not win it outright. But as I said before, the weight of being P1 can be very, very heavy. Near disaster on lap 1. On the final turn, I get loose, but I managed to hold on to it, and you can see my face. I was this close to ruining my own race in a race that I got the magical start of having the 3 people behind me spin out and a nice 3 or 4 second gap by the end of lap 1. I was already wary of pushing, and that made me even more cautious. But I also have to remember the people behind me want to win as well, and so you have to balance pushing versus safety, and so I tried to keep that in mind as I went forward. But as we jump ahead a lap, I say again, the weight of P1 is very, very heavy. For the second time in as many laps, I have almost ruined my own race. I am pushing, the gap behind has increased just a little bit, and I realize I have to be careful or I am going to ruin my shot at my first ever iRacing win. Fortunately for me, nothing else interesting happened in this race, and as we fast forward to the end of the final lap, we bring it home in P1. Thanks so much for watching.